Imagine if you were under investigation and the investigator hated you, disparaged you in all manner of ways, and fraternized with another employee working on your case who also hated you, denigrated your supporters, and made crucial investigative decisions on how your case should be treated and eventually adjudicated. Would anyone sitting here today believe that this was an acceptable state of affairs, particularly at an agency whose motto is fidelity, bravery, and integrity? I think not. To my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, please replace President Trump's name with your own name in a small sample of things Mr. Strzok has said. Envision how you would feel if you found out that the chief agent investigating you as a member of Congress was making these statements. F Trump. Trump is a disaster. Just went to a Southern Virginia Walmart. I could smell the Trump support. Or perhaps most alarmingly and revealingly, we'll stop it, referring directly to Mr. Trump's candidacy for president.
Agent Strzok, just so the record's clear, because it's been a little while, I didn't ask you the content of those interviews. I didn't ask you the names of who you interviewed. I asked you whether or not you interviewed anyone from July the 31st until August the 8th. And I find it interesting that the FBI will tell us no interviews were conducted before July 31st. That apparently doesn't impact an ongoing probe. But between July 31st and August 8th, it does. Here's the good news. I already know the answer to it. I went and looked at the file. The first interview that I can find is on August the 11th of 2016, which is 11 days after it began, which makes me wonder, on August the 6th, so you hadn't interviewed anyone, you're investigating this alleged Russian collusion with the Trump campaign. You're the lead investigator. You originated the investigation. You're the point of contact. You drafted the document. And here you are before you've interviewed a single solitary witness saying F Trump. Then that same day, your colleague, Lisa Page, wrote, "Maybe you're meant to protect the country from that menace." And you responded, "I can protect the country at many levels." We're not even a week into an investigation that you originated, approved, were the contact for. You hadn't interviewed a single solitary soul until August 11th, and you're already promising to protect the country from that menace, Donald Trump. And then on August the 8th, you still hadn't interviewed anyone. You're 8 days into your Russian collusion with the Trump campaign investigation, and you got another text from your colleague, Lisa Page. "Trump's not ever going to become president, right? Right?" And you replied, "No, he's not. We'll stop it." By the time you promised to stop him from becoming president on August the 8th, how many interviews had you conducted?
Mr. Gowdy, so two answers to that. One, with regard to how many interviews had or had not been conducted, I have been directed by counsel for the FBI not to answer that question. Second, sir, I think it's important to take those texts in the context of how they were written and what they meant.
And someone may ask you that question, Agent Strzok, but I didn't. I asked you how many people you interviewed before you wrote it. If you want to get into context, let one of my other colleagues do that with you. Here's what I want to know. Who's the he and he's not?
He is then candidate Trump.
So when you said, no, Donald Trump's not, in connection with the question going to become president, what's the it?
Chairman Gowdy.
We'll stop it.
Chairman Gowdy, that text needs to be taken in the context of which
I'm asking, look, if you want to have a debate over a two-letter word, we're going to have to do that some other time. What and who did you mean by it?
Mr. Gowdy, as I've stated, that text was written late at night in shorthand.
I don't care when it was written. I don't care whether it was longhand, cursive. I don't care about any of that. I want to know what it meant, Agent Strzok.
It would be his candidacy for the presidency, and my sense that the American population would not vote him into office.
Right. Well, we hadn't gotten to the will yet.
Well, I'm trying to cut to the chase and explain the text.
The will
I wrote
is the American people. Is that right? That's your testimony. The will stop it. You were speaking on behalf of the American people. Is that correct?
Mr. Gowdy, what my testimony is and what I said during extensive asking of this question during my prior interview is I don't recall writing that text.
Are you denying writing the text?
What I can tell you is that text in no way suggested that I or the FBI would take any action to influence the candidacy of
Agent
candidate
Strzok,
Trump.
that is a fantastic answer to a question nobody asked.
Yeah, Mr. Gowdy, you asked what I meant.
My question to you is
Chairman,
the
is the witness
will.
going to be permitted to answer the question being posed?
After the conclusion of Mr. Gowdy's questions, if there's a question that he has not had the opportunity to answer, he will be given additional time to do that. The witness will.
We look forward to that.
Mr. Gowdy's now, and he will not be interrupted by others.
So your testimony.
His time has
a couple of
expired,
weeks
Mr.
ago-
Chairman.
Your
by
testimony
2.5
a couple of
minutes.
weeks- It's going to be tough for me to get through it if I keep getting interrupted. Your testimony a couple of weeks ago was the we meant the American people, which I found confusing because on November the 7th, which is the day before the election, you said this. You were concerned that those same American people that you were speaking on behalf of might actually elect Donald Trump president. So you said, OMG, this is effing terrifying. I think we know what effing means. I'm pretty sure we have OMG down too. What was terrifying about those same American people you trusted to stop him in August, not stopping him in November? What was so terrifying about that, Agent Strzok?
Mr. Gowdy, I do not have a copy of the transcript. We have not been provided that transcript.
It's your text. It's not the transcript, it's your text.
Mr. Gowdy, what I would say in that is, one, I was not referring to the American electorate at all. The American electorate, I respect in their decisions, and their right to vote is absolutely a cornerstone of our democracy. So at no time did I insult or call into question the judgment or the power of the American electorate. What I was expressing in that text is my personal belief and my personal sense of how I saw and what I believed in the potential upcoming administration.
And see, that's what I find so confounding, because in August you blamed the we on the American people, that the American people would stop it, because you don't want it to be you and Lisa Page.
Mr. Chairman,
and you don't want it to be the FBI.
Are we not given 5 minutes to answer questions? We have indulged this harassment 9 minutes.
The
This
chair,
is the Judiciary and the Oversight Committee. I thought
the gentlewoman will suspend. The chair, in agreement with the ranking members of both committees, agreed that there would be liberality in the questioning by the chairman and the ranking members of each committee. The gentleman will continue.
What I find
And
confounding,
Mr. Chairman,
Agent
we
Strzok,
expect that liberality on every one of our questionings.
what I find confounding, Agent Strzok, is you were counting on the American people. That was the we you referenced in August when you said, we'll stop it. But the American people didn't stop it. He actually won. So then we go to March of 2017, and you're already talking longingly about him resigning. And then we go to the day that Special Counsel Mueller, well, before we go to that, that's March of 2017. March of 2016, you wrote, God, Hillary should win 100 million to 0. And I'm assuming Hillary would be former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton?
That's correct.
All right. In March of 2016, weren't you investigating her for potential mishandling of classified information?
We were.
Had you interviewed her yet?
No.
Had you interviewed more than 30 other witnesses that wound up being interviewed?
I would have to check the case file, but I'll take your representation.
Well, if she had said something incriminating in your interview that took place months later of her, would she have won 100 million to 0 then?
Likely not, no.
Well, then why wouldn't you wait until the investigation was over before you have her the nominee and winning a general election against an opponent that hadn't even been named yet? 100 million to 0, Agent Strzok? That's how bad she should win?
Mr. Gowdy, those personal expressions of my observing the political process of the presidential primaries had no bearing on my actions of any investigation, to include the investigation of Secretary Clinton.
You couldn't think of
or anybody else. Sir,
you couldn't think of a single person that would not vote for Hillary Clinton for president? 100 million to 0, Agent Strzok?
So that was clearly hyperbole, which I...
Well, let's say it was hyperbole. Let's divide it by 10. How about we say it was hyperbolic and divide it by 10? 100 million divided by 10, I'm pretty sure is 10 million. 0 divided by 10 is still 0. You couldn't think of a single solitary person that was going to vote for her for president before you interviewed her and while you were supposed to be investigating her.
Congressman, clearly that's not the truth. Clearly, I could envision millions of Americans who are likely and did vote for then candidate.
Well, you wrote it.
My point, sir.
Did you write it? Did you write that text?
I did write that, sir.
Okay. Were you under duress?
Political expression engaging in hyperbole.
Were you under duress?
Asked and answered over and over again.
The gentlewoman will suspend. The gentleman from South Carolina controls the time.
All right, we're going to go into one other time period. May 17th, 2017, Bob Mueller is appointed. Your friend Jim Comey's been fired. He's already leaked the memos to his law professor friend, and Mueller is special counsel. Do you remember how long it took for you to start talking about impeachment after Bob Mueller was appointed?
I don't, sir.
1 day. 1 day. And you were talking about impeachment. And for anyone who may have missed it the day after his appointment, Agent Strzok, you did it again 5 days later. Now, how many interviews had you done as part of the special counsel team within the first 5 days of his appointment?
Sir, again, same answer as before. I can't get into details.
Right, and the answer is also the same. It's 0. No interviews had been done.
I don't know if that's true or not.
No interviews had been done by August the 8th when you're talking about stopping him and how terrifying it would be for him to win and how you can protect the country. And no interviews have been done before you're talking about impeachment of the president. But no wonder
Chairman.
Bob Mueller kicked you off of the investigation, Agent Strzok. My question is, if you were kicked off when he read the text, shouldn't you have been kicked off when you wrote them?
Not at all.
Well, it wasn't the discovery of your text, Mr. Strzok. It was the existence of your bias that got you kicked off.
No, Mr. Gowdy, it wasn't. I do not have bias. My personal opinions in no way.
Well, then
have
why did
ever
you get kicked
impacted
off?
me.
Why'd you get kicked off?
Mr. Gowdy, my understanding of why I was kicked off was that based on understanding of those texts and the perception that they might create is
Well,
something that
hang on a
Special
second,
Counsel
Agent
Mueller,
Strzok. Hang
who's a
on a
man of
second.
extraordinary
Perception.
integrity.
You're saying it was the perception. There are 13 Democrats on the special counsel probe, including one who went to what he hoped was a victory party. That's a perception problem, too. They weren't kicked off. You were. Why were you kicked off?
Mr. Gowdy, I cannot speak to Special Counsel Mueller's
How long did
staffing
you talk to
decisions
him?
or
Please
the
let him
reasons why he did or didn't.
How long did you talk to him when he let you go?
Witness answer the question.
Witness will be afforded the opportunity to answer the question if there is a question he wants to answer after Mr. Gowdy's time.
My recollection, it was a short meeting, somewhere between 15 to 30 minutes, probably around 15 minutes.
And your testimony is Bob Mueller did not kick you off because of the content of your text. He kicked you off because of some appearance that he was worried about.
Sure. My testimony, what you asked and what I responded to was that he kicked me off because of my bias. I'm stating to you it is not my understanding that he kicked me off because of any bias, that it was done based on the appearance. If you want to represent what you said accurately, I'm happy to answer that question, but I don't appreciate what was originally said being changed.
I don't give a damn what you appreciate, Agent Strzok. I don't appreciate having an FBI agent with an unprecedented level of animus working on 2 major investigations during 2016.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Cummings.
Oh, point of order,
Mr.
maybe the
Chairman,
witness
can I
be permitted
respond to
answer
some
the
of the
questions that you promised him he would have an opportunity to answer?
Does
We
the gen-
endured
does the
15
gentleman-
minutes of badgering of the witness. Can he be allowed now to answer as you promised, Mr.
The
Chairman?
gentleman will suspend. The witness at any time can ask for additional time to respond to any member's question if the time has been
You
ended.
said you were going to give him that opportunity at the end.
I am
of-
giving him that opportunity.
Mr. Chairman, may I respond to?
Yes, you may.
Yes, Mr. Gowdy. Sir, I think it's important when you look at those texts that you understand the context in which they were made and the things that were going on across America. In terms of the text that we will stop it, you need to understand that that was written late at night, off the cuff, and it was in response to a series of events that included then candidate Trump insulting the immigrant family of a fallen war hero. And my presumption, based on that horrible, disgusting behavior, that the American population would not elect somebody demonstrating that behavior to be president of the United States. It was in no way, unequivocally, any suggestion that me, the FBI, would take any action whatsoever to improperly impact the electoral process for any candidate. So I take great offense and I take great disagreement to your assertion of what that was or wasn't. As to the 100 million to one, that was clearly a statement made in jest and using hyperbole. I, of course, recognize that millions of Americans were likely to vote for candidate Trump. I acknowledge that is absolutely their right. That is what makes our democracy such a vibrant process that it is. But to suggest somehow that we can parse down the words of shorthand textual conversations like there's some contract for a car is simply not consistent with my or most people's use of text messaging. I can assure you, Mr. Chairman, at no time in any of these texts did those personal beliefs ever enter into the realm of any action I took. Furthermore, this isn't just me sitting here telling you, you don't have to take my word for it. At every step, at every investigative decision, there are multiple layers of people above me, the assistant director, executive assistant director, deputy director, and director of the FBI, and multiple layers of people below me, section chiefs, supervisors, unit chiefs, case agents, and analysts, all of whom were involved in all of these decisions. They would not tolerate any improper behavior in me any more than I would tolerate it in them. That is who we are as the FBI. And the suggestion that I, in some dark chamber somewhere in the FBI, would somehow cast aside all of these procedures, all of these safeguards, and somehow be able to do this is astounding to me. It simply couldn't happen. And the proposition that that is going on, that it might occur anywhere in the FBI, deeply corrodes what the FBI is in American society, the effectiveness of their mission, and it is deeply destructive.
Let me tell you, when you have text messages, Mr. Strzok, the way you do, saying the things you did, you'd been better off coming in here and say, look, that was my bias. And you kind of get around to that a little bit when you say, hey, you know, everybody's got political views. Those are called biases, and we all have them, and you have come in here and said, I had no bias. And you do it with a straight face, and I watched you in the private testimony you gave, and I told some of the other guys, he is really good. He's lying. He knows, we know he's lying, and he could probably pass a polygraph. It's amazing.
Mr. Chairman.
No, this is my
Mr.
time.
Chairman, I'm sorry.
And it needs to be paused.
This point of order.
No.
The gentleman will state his point of order.
A member of this committee just asserted that this witness, who is under oath and a former agent of the FBI, lied. There is no evidence that. I ask him to withdraw it.
I do not withdraw it. He is not a member of Congress. It's not a violation of the rule. And just as you have been expressing bias through your members about what a hero
there is not a single person on this committee who has ever characterized a witness
Gentleman
as
from
lying.
Rhode Island.
Gentleman,
it's my time.
That's a disgrace.
Gentleman from Rhode Island will suspend.
No, the disgrace is what this man has done.
The gentleman from Texas will suspend for a moment.
There is the disgrace. And it won't be recaptured anytime soon because of the damage you've done to the justice system. And I've talked to FBI agents around the country. You've embarrassed them. You've embarrassed yourself. And I can't help but wonder when I see you looking there with a little smirk, how many times did you look so innocent into your wife's eye and lie to her about Lisa?
Mr. Chairman, this is outrageous.
Credibility of a witness
Shame
is always
on you.
an issue.
Mr. Chairman, please.
Have
you Mr. Chairman, this is intolerable harassment of the witness.
What's wrong with that? You need your medication.
The gentleman controls the time.
I ask that the witness be permitted to respond
Well,
to
he
will be permitted.
assertion.
He will be permitted
Did you
to respond.
ever
The
talk
gentleman
to
controls
Hillary
the time.
Clinton during your investigation, besides the one questioning you mentioned, before that or after that to this day?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman will state his point of order.
It is, I think, against the rules of the House for a member of the committee to be impugning the character of a witness.
It is not.
He should ask questions to elicit. The purpose of this hearing is to elicit information. He should ask questions to elicit information. He should not be impugning the character of the witness.
The gentleman is advised the rules of the House only are directed to members of the House and the President of the United States.
Therefore, in other words, it is okay to impugn the character of witnesses in any way whatsoever?
Well, listen, I've heard many members on your side of the aisle impugn character of somebody who is covered by the rules of the House. But the gentleman, the gentleman has 20 seconds left. The clock will be turned back on, and he can complete his time, and then the witness can respond.
So if you talk to Hillary Clinton, other than the time she was examined in front of the witnesses.
No.
So after throwing away what you have with all the bias you have, you've never even gotten a thank you. I yield back.
The gentleman may respond.
Sir, well, that's quite a set of statements.
Mr. Chairman, I did not finish with a question.
The gentleman,
there was no question asked.
Mr. Chairman, he's been given the opportunity to respond.
the gentleman will suspend. The time of the gentleman has expired, and as I've indicated
The rules
earlier,
of our hearings are if there is a question asked during the time, the witness may respond to the question after the time.
The witness is going to be allowed to respond briefly.
That's a new rule.
Sir, first, I assure you,
No question.
under oath, as I spoke also during my interview a week or two ago, I have always told the truth. The fact that you would accuse me otherwise, the fact that you would question whether or not that was the sort of look I would engage with in a family member who I have acknowledged hurting, goes more to a discussion about your character and what you stand for and what is going inside you.
It's to your credibility, and you lost your credibility.
Both individuals.
You've lost your credibility.